Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is well this morning. I want to introduce someone. I think there's Reverend Teresa who will go first before we will continue our program this morning.
Yes.
So,
I am ready.
All right.
Good morning. And thank you so much for this invitation. I'm Reverend Teresa Rolk. I serve the First Unitarian Universalist congregation in Ann Arbor. I am the congregational chaplain there, and I'm also involved with worship and music. And I also spend some time at St. Joseph Hospital as a chaplain. I want to thank you for the invitation to start us off today with an invocation. I was thinking about what or whom I should invoke as we start this, given the multi-faith background of all those gathered. And I've chosen a reading by the Reverend Sean Dennison from a small volume called Breaking and Blessing. The piece is called To Invoke Love. And I was imagining that no matter our backgrounds, you all would not be here, you would not be supporting the work that NAMI does without love as a guiding force. So if we would just take a couple breaths together, feel centered and ready to come into this space of learning and fellowship. And I will offer this invocation. To invoke love. To invoke love is to ask for a hug from a thunderstorm, spill tea in the lap of the infinite trickster, to make the biggest, most embarrassing mistake of your life in front of everyone who matters. To invoke love is to never know if it will come softly, with the nuzzle of a beloved dog, or pounce right on your chest with the strength of a lioness, protecting her cub, her pride, her homeland. To invoke love is to take the risk of inviting chaos, to visit the spaces you spent so much time making tidy, and watch as the breath of life scatters everything you have only just folded and put away. To invoke love is to allow for the possibility that your words and actions might become so empowered you can no longer believe in apathy or the self-righteous idea that nothing can change. To invoke love is to give up self-deprecation, false humility, pride, to consider yourself worthy to be made whole, willing to encounter love that will never let us let each other go. To invoke love is to guard against assumptions, take care with our words, and practice forgiveness, not as ethereal ideal, but right here in the messy midst of our imperfect lives. To invoke love is to approach each day and every person with wonder, anticipating love's arrival. Is this the moment? Is this love's grand entrance? Is this person the embodiment of love? Am I the one? To invoke love is to play the fool, the one more concerned with loving than with appearance or reputation, the one ready and willing to be vulnerable, abandoning anything that gets in love's way. To invoke love is to be ready to become love, here, now, in everything we do. Are you ready? The words of Sean Dennison. Amen, and may it be so.
Thank you very much, Reverend Teresa. And yes, I am ready. And I hope we all are today and this morning. Thank you. So I wanted to just mention that we'll be recording this event today, but we will not be recording the breakout rooms. Those will be private, so you don't have to worry about that. We'll keep everything anonymous. I'd also like at this time to thank our sponsors. First and foremost, of course, NAMI, Washtenaw County, in which I have the privilege of serving as their executive director. I didn't mention, my name is Judy Gardner, for those that don't know me. I also want to have gratitude and thank the Rethink Health, which is a Ripple initiative. Also, the Public Safety Mental Health Preservation Millage through CMH, which have been our proud sponsors of this event as well. So right now, we're going to, our first segment this morning is we're going to break out into some breakout rooms. And the question in your breakout room will be, what has been the hardest part of the pandemic for you and the community that you serve? So committee members will facilitate the conversation, and there will be volunteers there to take note. So without further ado.
Judy, could you give me another minute, please?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely. So once you, as Maria put in the chat, feel free to introduce yourself once you enter the breakout rooms. So we're going to wait just a second before we actually do that.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Oh, the question will be, what has been the hardest part of the pandemic for you and the community that you serve?
If you don't mind, just could you talk another minute or two? For some reason, it's not going through.
Okay, certainly. Well, we're pretty on schedule. It's 8:37. We were scheduled to be in the breakout rooms till 8:40. But I can talk a little bit about NAMI. I'm hopeful that most folks here today know about us, but if you don't, we've been here in Washtenaw County for over 35 years, and we provide support to those who live with a mental health condition and their loved ones. We are a group of volunteers, all peers. We are non-clinical, but I would say that we are a mighty force. That's the word that's coming to me this morning. The impact that the community that we share, that's a safe space for all of us to share about our mental health journeys, has been actually very instrumental in my personal life. I live in support of a son with a serious mental illness, and I found NAMI 12 years ago when I enrolled in their family-to-family education program, and it has truly changed my life. So hence I am here doing this wonderful work at this time. So I'm very truly grateful for that. And later on, we're gonna, in this workshop or conference, we're going to hear from one of a young lady who is an amazing speaker, who spoke, who is a most requested speaker for NAMI, and you'll hear her. So that'll be fantastic, and you'll enjoy that. So John, are we ready?
It's a signing breakout. Okay, I'm opening all the rooms.
All right, wonderful. Enjoy, everyone.
Just a minute. I guess I got to do this manually. That's fine.
Okay, it's okay.
Ooh.
And you will have 20 minutes in your breakout room. So socialize with each other, get to know each other, and have that conversation. I'd sing, but you don't want me to do that.
most of you probably have received a notification to join a room. So please be sure to click join.
Thank you, Maria.
John, do we need to turn off the recording during this time?
Thank you.
Yep.
So did everyone get back in? All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to hear from a fantastic speaker. I'd like to introduce Andrea May. She is a graduate of our peer-to-peer education program. Oh, folks are still coming back. I'm sorry. Let's wait. I'll start over in a second.
We didn't have the full 20 minutes and I was on my last person.
All right, welcome back, everyone, once again. Right now, I'm going to introduce one of our speakers this morning. Her name is Andrea May, and she's a graduate of our peer-to-peer education program. And I must say that Andrea has been one of our most sought-after speakers, sharing her personal mental health journey in recovery for NAMI Washtenaw. And so I am pleased to present you Andrea. So Andrea, you're on.
Hi, my name's Andrea May. I'm beautiful, I'm smart. I can do anything I put
Andrea,
my mind.
are you?
Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear
Okay.
you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm beautiful, I'm smart. I can do anything I put my mind to. I love myself. Jesus loves me and God loves me too. This is what I grew up saying to myself. I still remember my mom holding me up to the mirror in our small, smelly bathroom. She would say, repeat after me. And I would say every single word after. I'm beautiful, I'm smart. I can do anything I put my mind to. I love myself. Jesus loves me and God loves me too. This is called positive affirmations. We would do this every single day. I still do. It's just that now it has a different meaning. Today, when I say those words, it's usually to calm me down. Most times it's after I've been crying all day. Sometimes I get so anxious and on edge that the only thing that can soothe me is to say something over and over. Repeating my positive affirmations is a phrase that I like to say to calm me down. Okay, so side note, right? This is called the distract skill. The way I choose to distract myself from the crippling pain and anxious feeling is to focus on those words I'm repeating to myself. I like to concentrate and think on those words while actively believing what they mean to me. Now, back to the phrases and positive affirmations. My most recent one is saying, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I remember someone asked me, what role did my faith play in my mental health? My faith helped to save my life. Now, honestly speaking, I would have to say I've experienced good and bad with religion and mental health. Religious people that tell you things like you're possessed if you have bipolar diagnosis, or some that say, oh, you're depressed, all you need to do is pray and you'll be okay, as if depression isn't a real sickness. Yep, I've heard it all. Back in 2012, my doctor diagnosed me with chronic depression, anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and borderline personality disorder. In 2020, ADHD was added to my diagnosis. At that time, I felt very lost in my faith in mental health. I stopped talking to who I believed in because I felt like maybe they weren't listening. I became very distant from my family, and I was having about 20 extreme panic attacks a day. And well, you can say I was having a hard time. Things got really bad and I couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to reach out to a friend this time for help. Someone who worked at my local community mental health center told me about NAMI. Now, one of the best things I could have ever done was sign up for NAMI's 8-week peer-to-peer educational program. The reason I signed up was because I felt alone. I figured if I socialized a little bit, it would help. And it did somewhat, but what I found out for me was just that it wasn't about just building new relationships, but mainly about
Oh, good.
learning more information that could help me learn more about my mental health. One of my favorite weeks in NAMI's peer-to-peer is the second one. We studied the brain and how it works hand in hand with mental health. They taught me a lot about different diagnoses and even more about mine. The other thing I learned that week was SMART goals. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Okay, so I love to exercise, right? Like I love the treadmill. So let's say this. Let's say my goal is to use the treadmill more. This is an example of the opposite of a SMART goal. A SMART goal would sound more like, I will work out on the treadmill for 30 minutes, 5 days a week for a month. That is a specific, measurable, attainable, and timely goal that I have now set for myself. This tool that they taught me has helped so much. For me having ADHD, I use this tool often to help me stay on track. Back to faith and mental health. We want to provide more of an open space between faith and mental health. So I've been in the psych ward once in my life, and how many people do you think reached out to me from my faith community? 2, maybe 3? No, 0. It's different when you have physical health issues or mental health issues. For instance, when you have a physical health problems, 9 times out of 10, someone from your faith community will reach out and offer services that may help. They may bring you food, run errands, pray with you. Sometimes they even offer to help out financially. But when it's mental health problems, it's rare that someone reaches out. At least that's been my experience. My very first and last time being in a psych ward was traumatizing. But you know what would have helped is someone from my faith community reaching out. No one reached out, not one single person. It's actually quite sad, but I didn't let that stop me from growing my relationship with who I believe in. I decided for me, my faith and mental health go hand in hand. Just like I pray when I'm physically hurting, I pray when I'm mentally hurting too. Well, it has been great talking to you. I'm so glad I'm here to share my story. As we part ways, I ask that you remember this. It doesn't have to be religion or mental health. You don't have to choose one or the other. For me, it has always been both. I wish I had more time to share, but I want you to remember this. You are strong for supporting your loved ones. You are strong for asking for help. You are strong for getting the help that you need. Don't ever be ashamed. Thank you. Now, does anyone have any questions? Maybe about my church or how it was helpful or not helpful, or any other topics?
This is Patty. I'm wondering how could you have let your church know, or did you let your church know that you were experiencing some mental health issues and no one reached out, or did you not reach out to the church, or how could you reach out to the church in hindsight?
That is a very great question. So, I reached out to my church, to a specific church members who I felt like I could trust before I was hospitalized. And even like after the hospitalization, they knew that something was going on with me, and they knew that I was in the hospital, and no one reached out. So that's what I mean. I just mean like if you know of someone struggling, it's okay to reach out to them. And the way that they could have helped more was to check on me more, or, you know, just a simple hello more often, or at all. Actually, at that time, I wasn't getting from my specific church family. I had other faith community people reach out to me later, but from my specific church family, after I expressed what was going on with me, nobody reached back out to me, if that answers your question.
That's sad. Thank you for sharing.
Yes. Any other questions?
I do have one, Andrea. What, how can a church express that they're open to being supportive, or what? I mean, I think like a program, should we have like a designated person, or how can the church be more available to folks?
I think it's really about reading the room. And it's almost like, you know, for many faith communities, they look at it as a family. So when you think about what your family member may need, it shouldn't be, how can I explain it? It's like, you have to read the room to decipher on. There's lots of different things that you can do. You mentioned one. I just heard you mention one. I forgot already, but there's lots of different things that you can do. For instance, you could set up a program. That's the one you mentioned. You could set up a program, a mental health program, but I really like the idea of having an individual person who may reach out to someone, someone that they can trust to talk to. And this is a really hard question. It's really hard because it's something that has to be unraveled. It's a really big question. I'm going to be honest, I'm not really sure myself how to answer that question. I just know for myself, it would have been helpful for maybe a mental health program, a seminar. I know that my faith community, we held lots of different health seminars, but nothing for mental health, nothing to inform people about mental health and to let them know that it really, for me, it goes hand in hand with my faith. It doesn't have to be one or the other, and that's not really talked about.
So it sounds like maybe education.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like maybe education on mental health issues.
Yes.
For the congregation. Okay. I can do that.
Andrea?
Hmm?
Hey, sweetie. I just wanted to ask to clarify something. And then just to add, that, like at my church, we have counselors, like it's on the screen, like we're, you know, everything is kind of, you know, we're watching service a lot now, but it says right on there, do you need counseling, mental health? And they have counselors, and you can kind of tap into that. And so I thank and praise God that that's available, you know, for folk. But the other thing I wanted to clarify, when you said that nobody from faith-based reached out to you, and it's kind of like the same question, but I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. You reached out and said, I've been in a mental health facility. I guess probably said, would you guys pray for me? You know, what we say at church, right? But then nobody responded. That's what I'm trying to hear. And I'll only say to you, you know, oftentimes, and that's back to what you just said, right? Awareness is so important because we get so tangled up in should we say anything? You know, we think people are embarrassed, but if you reached out, so is that what you're saying, sweetie, that you reached out and explicitly said, I've been in a mental health facility, I have some mental health issues, and no one responded?
Okay, so there's a difference between no one responding and how they responded. So I hear you, and I would say maybe one person might have reached out. And when I say faith community, I'm excluding family and faith community, my personal family and faith community. So I'm specifically speaking of the church that I'm a member of. And it was, I got one call, and I still haven't heard back from the person who called me the first time from my church. And that was a while ago. I haven't heard too much back from them. So yeah, and forgive me, I know of lots of churches that offer different programs, but not all churches or faith communities do.
Right.
They don't all offer the things that I would think that would help me. A lot of communities do, but not all. And there's a lot of smaller communities within larger ones. So my particular faith community is smaller, and no, the way they approached the situation was almost as if you could catch it, if you could catch my mental health issues. It wasn't warm, it wasn't genuine. It's like they needed to be trained in how to speak to someone.
Absolutely. Thank you for the answer.
Andrea, I'd like to jump in and say, this is fantastic, the questions you're getting, and I'd like to invite you to at the end, we're going to have an opportunity to do some Q&A. And so can you join us in that Q&A so we can, so we can be able to ask you more questions, because this is really valuable.
I didn't realize it was going to be this many questions.
Yeah, so at this time, though, we're going to go to break. So we're going to have about a 10-minute break. Is that correct, Maria? Short break. Okay, yeah, short break. Please return at 9:20. So that's about 5 minutes to grab coffee. And so we'll see you in 5 minutes. And thank you so very much, Andrea. And we will kind of circle back during our Q&A. Thank you. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. So now we're going to get into part 2 of our conference this afternoon, and we're going to hear from 4 panelists. Each panelist is going to have 15 minutes to speak, and after they will introduce themselves and introduce the following person that's going to speak after them. And once we're all done, we're going to have about 20 minutes for another Q&A. So the first panelist this morning is Melissa Tasker. She's from Community Mental Health, the CARES program. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, good morning, everyone. All right. And I'm going to share my screen. Oh, just kidding. Oh, there we are. Oh, okay. So I am the program administrator from Community Mental Health, and I oversee our 24-hour access and crisis lines and our CARES program that was funded by the millage. So I'm just going to speak about our team and what we can do and what services that we provide. You go to the next slide for me. Thanks. So our crisis team is made up of master's level clinicians who are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we have 2 locations. We have a location in Ypsilanti and we have a location in Ann Arbor. And we have about 16 crisis service professionals who are available and in the office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So these staff take all of the crisis calls that come through our 24-hour crisis line. And over the phone, they'll do some triaging to help determine the severity of what's being reported. And then they'll oftentimes outreach to a location of a family member or a loved one or an individual. Oftentimes we do get calls from law enforcement for us to come and help them when when they have responded to someone who may need our help. We also respond to schools, and we also do a lot of coaching over the phone. So we do get a lot of calls from teachers, parents, just wanting information about what to do next, about what's normal, about how to help. And we get calls from individuals who are in a current crisis. Maybe they're having an anxiety attack, maybe they're feeling suicidal, and so we talk them through that and figure out what to do next. The exciting thing about our team is that there's a lot of different things that can be done, most of which don't require a hospitalization. So I know that, the going to a hospital and being admitted is the highest level of care that is provided. And it's really for those individuals who cannot be safe in the community. But otherwise, we do our best, and our main goal is to provide families and provide individuals with support so that they can stay in their homes with extra support, with connections to outpatient care. We also partner with partial hospitalization programs throughout the county. So those programs are essentially day treatment programs where you go during the day and you come home at night. We also have a crisis residential home that I oversee. And we also have have an assessment center called 750 Towner that we named because that's the address. And that's where folks can go for about 23 hours to 48 hours if they're having a crisis that might just need, or they just need some space, some time to get away from their current environment that's a little bit more structured. So when we come out to the community, we are doing real-time mental health assessments. So all of our clinicians are trained in how to diagnose, how to treat, how to assess for risk and suicidality. So we're able to determine if someone's safe to be in the community. So we will do a full suicide risk assessment. We will ask questions about natural supports, protective factors, and what's available to see if we can mitigate anything that's going on in the community so that they can stay. Sometimes our team feels like the person is not safe to be in the community, so we will do what we have to do to make sure they get to the hospital. And that also involves the involuntary petition process, which can sometimes be really daunting and scary. So we do a lot of coaching with family members. Mental illness is very similar. Well, it's still a medical condition. It is a kind of, your brain is an organ just like the rest of your body. And so we have to treat it like that. I always compare mental illness to like diabetes. If you have diabetes and you don't get it treated, it's going to get worse and you're going to end up in the hospital. Same thing with mental illness. If you don't treat mental illness when you're having symptoms, it will get worse. And then you might end up in the hospital because the symptoms will progress. So our goal is to try to treat people before they get to that point. We also have follow-up with outpatient referrals. And anytime anyone calls our crisis line, they are going on our very large crisis board. We have 3 different shifts and we keep track of every single person that we're working with until their crisis is resolved, and we're providing that follow-up care. Can you go to the next slide? Thanks. Okay, So our crisis team has been around for about 8 years. And in the last several years, we've really built on our outreach component. So we are outreaching more than ever. But one of the things that we discovered with doing that is that we were encountering a lot of individuals who were in a crisis and needed mental health care, but couldn't access mental health care because maybe they didn't have Medicaid. Maybe their symptoms kind of fell into that mild to moderate category. So they didn't necessarily meet criteria for our CMH services, but they also couldn't access care in the community because the wait lists were so long. And so what was happening is they were finding themselves in a repeat crisis situation because our crisis team didn't have the ability to actually treat mental illness. We could follow and coach and make sure people were doing okay, but we didn't have a psychiatrist or any therapist to really treat folks. So when the mental health millage, the mental health and public safety millage passed in 2018, we built this team that we named the CARES team to be an extension of our crisis team to provide treatment for individuals who found themselves in a crisis or before they were in a crisis and couldn't access care in the community, so that we could provide stabilization services to prevent people from finding themselves in a crisis. So this team is a treatment team composed of mental health professionals, case managers, we have psychiatrists, nursing, and a lot of peer support specialists. And so the goal of this team is to stabilize symptoms and then eventually at some time refer to an ongoing provider like a primary care office. Because what we'll find is that the majority of people do not have chronic mental health needs. Sometimes people have episodic mental health needs. And so maybe they're having an episode of care where they need intense treatment, but are able to stabilize and recover from their symptoms and be treated and followed up by a regular primary care doctor. Sometimes we find that their symptoms are more chronic and need additional help. And so then we connect them to a longer term provider, like maybe our CMH team. So the goal is to stabilize. And so far, our CARES team has been providing care since 2019, and we've served over 1,000 individuals. And we've been able to refer out a lot of individuals back to the community. And the length of stay in our program is about 4 months, but we really don't have a time frame on that. So this has been an amazing resource. We've also seen, as a result of this, a reduction in hospitalizations that we've been seeing. So we've really been seeing a good impact on the community. So to access this team is our 24-hour crisis line. It's 734-544-3050. And that number will get you to all of this. So you will speak to a clinician who will triage the situation and will get you to the place that you need to go. All right, and that is all I have.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. And so now we will hear from our health navigator, Abigail Norris. So, hi, Abigail. You're up.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I have a PowerPoint as well that So I'm going to be talking, okay, my name's Abby Norris. I am a behavioral health navigator for St. Joe's Chelsea. And Kathy Walls is another behavioral health navigator who works, we work together. She might be a name that you've heard of before. She's been out in the community longer than I have. She is off today. She just had 2 new twin grandbabies, so she is spending time with them. So I'll be talking about urgent versus crisis situations. Next slide. So again, I'm a behavioral health navigator. I shared a little bit about this in our breakout room, but pre-pandemic, Kathy and I would be out in the 5 healthy towns at places like the community resource centers, maybe a doctor's office, and we would be out in the community. We'd be meeting with people, assessing them for what kind of care they need, and then connecting them with community resources, whether that be a therapist or a psychiatrist. And since COVID and the pandemic, we have been working from home, and that has been a little bit more difficult. So people call us at these numbers that are listed there or email us, and we still work to communicate with them and provide them with referrals to the appropriate services. We can offer supportive counseling before they're connected to established provider, but that is just a supportive kind of service that we can offer. And again, right now that is just over the phone. So if you would like to reach us at all, that is where you can contact us. And next slide. So I am going to talk a little bit about urgent and crisis situations. I also work at the hospital in assessment services, and I assess people in the emergency room for inpatient mental health admission. So like Melissa mentioned, that is the highest level of mental health care that is for crisis situations and stabilization. So how to define if between urgent and crisis. An urgent situation, maybe warranting outpatient level of care, would be someone that's experiencing mild to moderate symptoms. And I'm going to talk about symptoms after this. So they're only having a couple of symptoms. Impact on functioning is moderate to mild. The symptoms are not impacting their functioning. They're able to still go to work. They're still able to go to school. They're able to do things around the house. And another kind of trigger for a situation, an urgent or crisis situation, could be experiencing a traumatic event. So maybe they've experienced a loss. Maybe they've been involved in a traumatic event like a car accident. And how is the person using coping skills? Are they doing things that are helpful and healthy, like reaching out to supports or exercising, listening to music, reading? Are they doing things that are helping them feel better or not? A crisis situation, if someone is a danger to themselves or others, that immediately should be a big red flag that, hey, this is an urgent situation. This is a crisis situation. I need to get help with this immediately. Someone might verbalize that they are a danger to themselves or others, and there's some other signs you can look for that I'll talk about later on. In a crisis situation, level impact on functioning would be more severe. Someone's unable to function. They're not going to work. They're not going to school. They're not getting out of bed. They can't take care of the things that they need to on a daily basis, activities of daily living, like showering, eating. Another thing would be if they have experienced a traumatic event and they are not coping well, they're using unhealthy coping skills, turning to substances. Maybe they're withdrawing and they are not talking to anyone. They're just staying in bed all day. Another crisis would be lacking insight into treatment, the need for treatment. So someone is so sick that they do not understand the level of sickness that they're experiencing. This might be someone that is experiencing potential hallucinations of some sort, or a level of paranoia where they feel like people are after them and they're out of touch with reality. Next slide. So an important part of recognizing if it is urgent or crisis is knowing the warning signs. Next slide. So some warning signs, risk factors are, again, these are things that people would maybe verbalize to you, or you recognize because you are familiar with them and you know their kind of baseline behavior. So feeling sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks. severe out of control behaviors. So those could be out of control anger or sadness, where they're maybe crying uncontrollably. They feel like they can't manage their emotions. Overwhelming fear, feeling like an impending sense of doom, like there's something bad is going to happen. Severe mood swings and drastic changes in personality or sleep habits or appetite habits. So that can go either way, a severe increase in eating and sleep, or a decrease. Next slide. Some other warning signs or risk factors are extreme difficulty concentrating or staying still. So someone might be fidgety, pacing, they can't concentrate. Normally they're able to have a conversation with you, stay focused, and you find that they're all over the place. Eating, throwing up, or using laxatives to lose weight. Repeated use of alcohol or drugs or any other sort of substance. Caffeine can be a substance that is overused. Trying to harm or kill yourself, or making plans to do so, or verbalizing they want to do that to someone else. I'll also add here that sometimes people will make statements about wanting to harm themselves, and there's a distinction between self-harm behavior and suicidal behavior. So some people use self-harm as a way to release, and that would be defined as non-suicidal self-injurious behavior. So still would warrant a higher level of care or an appropriate evaluation, but just because someone is verbalizing maybe they want to cut themselves, they may not be suicidal. There is a distinction there. Next slide. So things to pay attention to are the severity and durations of these warning signs. Again, is it happening every day? You might notice it is happening every couple days, and then you notice that duration begins to increase to daily or multiple times a day. And severity and impact of functioning. Is it impairing their ability to function, go to work? Is it impairing relationships, whether that be personal, work relationships, professional? And if you notice a change in the person over a 2-week period is when you would want to consider getting assistance. Like Melissa mentioned, Washtenaw County CMH is a great resource to reach out to. And also Kathy and I are always available. We are not a crisis line, and we note that on our voicemail, but we are always available to provide appropriate triage as well. And next slide. So these would be warning signs of suicide, and when you would seek immediate attention, including calling 911. So if someone talks, writes, or draws about death, or they say they want to die or kill themselves, they have no reason to live, they're feeling like a burden to others, they feel hopeless, helpless, and they don't want to be here tomorrow, or they want to go to sleep and not wake up. Next slide. Other warning signs of suicide include looking for ways to attempt suicide. So people might think of methods, including they might verbalize them to you. They might be looking them up on the internet. They could give away their possessions, things that have meaning to them, or reckless behavior. Next slide. So if you know someone is considering suicide, it can be, a very alarming situation, especially if you've never been in it before. So it's important to first reach out to the appropriate authorities. So 911, call 911 and let them know that you're with someone that is a danger to themselves or others. If the person is able to tell you that they're feeling, suicidal and they want to go to the hospital and get help, and you are a trusted person for them, and they feel like you can get them there safely, they want to get there, that would be something to, that is a judgment call, but it is important to make sure they can get to the hospital safely. So whether that be with you, a family member, or EMS. Stay calm, but not concerned. Asking if they're suicidal or asking if they have a certain plan or method how they do that does not increase their likelihood of harming themselves. And getting a mental health professional involved, or again, police, and making sure the person is not left alone. Next slide. And these are some places that you can reach out to. So in a crisis, how do you respond? If someone is immediate danger to themselves or others, do not leave the person alone. Reach out to 911. You can call the CMH crisis team at that phone number and ask for a wellness check, or ask to be connected to a member of the crisis team if you're with that person. Or you can also call the National Suicide Hotline, or again, like I mentioned, police at 911. Next slide. And again, I wanted to touch on the different levels of care. So a thing that we're running into is there is a huge need for mental health of all levels of care, and there are lacks of resources in the community. So outpatient level of care is where you would meet with a therapist weekly, maybe bi-weekly, depending on your needs or a person's needs. And inpatient or intensive outpatient IOP would be the next up level of care, which there's a few programs again out in the community, but that would be where a person would go to this outpatient program 2 to 3 days a week. It's also called a day program, and people go there, they would meet with the therapist, they go to group programming, and then they get to go home at the end of the day. A partial hospitalization program is a step up from that, very similar structure, but people are attending that 5 days a week. It's an in-between of outpatient care and inpatient level of care. So it is very much structured like an inpatient level of care program, but people go home at the end of the day at 3 o'clock, and then they return the next morning. And the length of stay for those programs are typically 10 to 14 days. That is decided by a treatment team. Inpatient level of care is, again, the highest level of mental health care. And that is accessed through an emergency department. Inpatient units it's very rare that they do a direct admission. So this would be how a person goes into an emergency room for a mental health crisis. They're evaluated, and if they're needing inpatient level of care, they are either placed at that hospital if they have a mental health unit, or the clinician will bed search for them for an appropriate inpatient mental health unit. And then residential is meant for people that need longer levels of care. So a residential program can be for mental health or substance use, or both. And those are often 3, 6, 12-month programs that people are going away and they're staying at facilities. Next slide. And how to reach out in a non-crisis. So these are things that are helpful to say or not do. When someone's struggling, don't say, we all go through times like these, you'll be fine. You don't want to minimize a person's feelings or invalidate them. Don't suggest to the person that they have a specific mental health condition. If you're not a mental health professional, leave that up to the professionals. Do consider ways to help the person decrease stress. How can you help them? Can you offer them, helping with dinner or kids? Can they postpone a stressful event? Share what has helped you in the past and provide resources that you have available. And next slide. And these are some ideas. It's always very important to take care of yourself when you're pouring into other people. You can't pour from an empty cup. So these are ideas to maintain your self-care while you're taking care of other people. Get help if you feel like you're burning out. We can't help people alone. Set and maintain healthy boundaries. So make sure that you set limits around work, around friends, family, whatever you need to set boundaries around. Make sure you set those and keep those. That's how we stay from burning out. Strive for good physical and emotional and spiritual health. Have a social life outside of work. Practice a mindful hobby, whether that be mindful reading, yoga, meditation, mindful walking. Be gentle with yourself, give yourself grace. Try to each day think about something good that's happened, or practice gratitude. I personally start my day with and end my day with gratitude. Keep laughing and playing. And that's it for me. Next up, we will have Dr. Kershaw, who's going to talk about the roles that PCPs play.
Yes. Hello. It says I'm unmuted. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes. I'm Martha Kershaw. I'm a family practice doctor. And I have practiced at the University of Michigan and Packard Health, and I'm currently the medical director over at the Hope Clinic in Ypsilanti. And yeah, I've also been volunteering with NAMI as a for a couple of years, and so yeah, it's been very interesting listening so far, because if there's a urgent crisis and urgent situation, you know, the primary care physician is maybe, you know, obviously going to need if there's something like that. But for many mental health conditions, the primary care can be a good place, a good source of help. So like a third of patients in an outpatient primary care setting are dealing with mental health conditions. So it's something that we are trained to deal with every single day at different levels with different amounts of expertise, but nonetheless, they're definitely just as much a part of our as dealing with high blood pressure or arthritis or diabetes or things like that. And as a previous speaker mentioned, we really kind of need to think of it in those ways. Like things can have, they can kind of ebb and flow, and they can have a crisis time, and they can have a maintenance time. They don't really go away. They're something that you always kind of need to be touching base about. So as far as, you know, of course, if you see for the first time, most of you are familiar, you know, there's a 3-page sheet of things that you fill out with every single symptom that you could possibly ever have experienced. And hopefully there are several mental health related questions on that. And, you know, answering those honestly really can help you establish a good relationship and clue that primary care person into the fact that along with, you know, your elbow pain, you also have, you know, some mental health related issues. And then subsequent to that, if you have a PCP, you know, again, being straightforward that you're concerned about certain symptoms or behaviors or thoughts, or someone in your family has expressed concern, and just, you know, not waiting for your PCP to sort of ask or guess that you may be, and just, you know, addressing it directly, it gets that conversation going right away and not, at the end of the visit or something. So as mentioned previously, common symptoms that can be related to mental health illness, poor sleep, fatigue, trouble concentrating with memory, lots of kinds of pain, headaches, chest pain, digestive difficulties, palpitations, increased use of substances, increased worry, increased feelings of sadness, of course. But a lot of those can also be related to other health issues. So part of what a PCP is going to be trying to do is sort out, could you also have a thyroid problem? Could you also be anemic? Could you have diabetes? Could you have some other health issues that in fact cause some symptoms or make some symptoms worse? So, there's some things to be sorted out. And again, just being really laying out the different symptoms and answering the questions honestly and, not feeling like you have to be strong and not tell someone really what you're experiencing. So we can't measure mental health issues like we can a blood pressure with a lab test, but there are some tests. And so there's questionnaires that have been validated, and there are very specific questions with scales, like on a scale of 0 to 3, in the last couple weeks, have you been experiencing a loss of interest in doing things, or loss of pleasure in doing things that normally you would? Or have you, in the last couple of weeks, on a scale from 0 to 3, have you feeling more down, depressed, or hopeless? So there's a number of rating scales like that can evaluate anxiety, bipolar disorder, substance use. And by using those questionnaires, a provider can start to get a sense of how severe is this. And it will include questions about, have you thought about or had plans for suicide, or thought about being better off dead, or have an overwhelming fear of, a feeling of dread, questions like that. And the scores can help us see, okay, this is, a mild to moderate situation. It's definitely there, or wow, this is really severe right now. And that can help the provider know kind of what to be doing. It's also helpful because at later visits, we can redo those things, years, and sort of see whether there's been improvement or things have gotten worse. So it really does serve as, kind of like the blood pressure monitor or the sugar monitor for some of the mental health conditions. So treatment for mild to moderate anxiety and depression, doesn't necessarily need to include medications. So, a lot of people, I guess, are concerned that if they go to their doctor, they're just going to be told to take a medication. But that really depends on what's going on. And for mild to moderate anxiety and depression, many other things are actually just as helpful. Things like the self-care things that we just heard outlined, paying attention to sleep, paying attention to diet, getting physical exercise, getting outside, and decreasing use of substances, of caffeine stimulants, as well as alcohol or other psychoactive substances. All of those taking care of things seem so basic, but they really make a big difference in people's mental health. And sometimes people just need to do that sort of like, oh yeah, okay, I know I'm supposed to be doing those things, but I guess it could really help. And I don't know, sometimes just having that support from your PCP to say, no, really, those things are important, can be helpful. Obviously, as we've just heard, when people are in crisis or very urgent situations, then your PCP is going to need to enlist the help of some other folks and really get you connected with some mental health professionals. But that doesn't mean they don't stay part of the team. And as also mentioned, after sort of the crisis is settled, going back to your PCP and having the PCP managing or at least helping you monitor some of your mental health symptoms and medications and so forth is something that we do. Again, that's fine. So, and the medications really, when people have more moderate to severe symptoms, they really help control some of those. And same with, bipolar. And I compare it to being like on a roller coaster. And if you feel like emotionally you're just on this roller coaster and you're just like, it's overwhelming and you can't kind of catch up with yourself, like, okay, I'd take care of myself if I could even just like catch, but it's not in that position to take that control. The medications can be very helpful in just turning that down a notch, just slowing it down enough to be able to implement those self-care things. People often are afraid of side effects. There are some side effects, although most are not very severe. And if usually what the provider will do is start you on a little bit lower dose and then increase the dose gradually over a few weeks. And that tends to minimize the side effects. The other thing is that the medications don't work overnight. They take a while to kick in. So again, if someone's in crisis, then that needs to be addressed more quickly. But often in a primary care setting, ease you into the medication, and it is a matter of a few weeks where you really have to have that patience to say, okay, help is coming. Okay, I am sleeping a little better. Okay, I'm not freaking out quite as much about, whatever it is. And so it just can help that roller coaster, slow it down so that you can start to, So, and the medications aren't addicting. So if you're having the chemical imbalance and that kind of thing, and medications help you, and you medications too quickly, you go back to the same situation you were in. So it can feel like you're, I don't know, withdrawing but if you needed the medication and you withdraw it, just like if you need blood pressure medicine and you stop your blood pressure medicine, your blood pressure goes back up, or your diabetes medicine, your diabetes sugars go back up. But the medications aren't addicting in the sense that they create their own need, with the exception of benzodiazepines. And those are the medications like Xanax and Ativan that get used as a quick fix for anxiety, but in fact, often end up backfiring and creating, those are very addicting and they can become very difficult for people to come off of. So they provide this quick relief and people are so like, I need something now, but then they're stuck on them. So the benzodiazepines are really the ones that we would like for people to avoid, and just have the patience to let the other medications and the other and the things like that work. There's a question in the chat about vitamins and supplements, and there are a couple of medications, again, for the milder forms of anxiety and depression that have been shown to be effective. I will say always with vitamins and supplements that you need to think of the same as being on a medication, because they are. They're changing the chemicals in your body, and just because they aren't a prescription doesn't mean they aren't, going to interact with things. So always ask your provider. Always let your provider know if you're trying something. And the other thing with vitamins and supplements is, country, they're not regulated the same way as medications are. They're not tested or approved by the FDA. So something can say it has this amount of St. John's wort in it, and it can have anywhere from 0 to 200% of wort in it. And so you can say, oh, I tried that and it wasn't helpful, or I tried that and it made me, it effects. It's like, well, you have to get a reliable brand, and there are reliable brands out there tested, but you can't go to Kroger and just pick up whatever's cheapest, whatever's on sale. Some of the supplements, when used properly, can be as helpful as the prescription medications for mild to moderate symptoms. And some people, but they can also interfere and interact with other medications that you're taking. So yeah, just I hope that answers that question. And then that was kind of it, what I had. Just like I said, think of your PCP as someone that's on the team. Bring them your concerns. If you feel like you're not getting through, just, be persistent, ask specific questions, and be open to talking about a variety of things, and just think of them as part of your team. Am I supposed to talk about the next person here? I got to get over to my agenda. Okay, I think the next person to present is Pastor Harold, who will talk about his church's mental health program.
Thank you so much. Let me see. Yes, my name is Harold Wembley. I am the senior pastor at Christian Love Fellowship Ministries International in Ypsilanti. I've spent 25 years as a youth counselor and director in the juvenile court systems, as well as I am a master ACE trainer, and I'm the intervention specialist for Ann Arbor Public Schools for the last 9 years. One of the things that we do over at Christian Love is that I was really excited when I began to talk about mental health. And even in the pulpit, I find myself preaching about mental health, and I use different examples. And I also am very open book. I was able to share with the congregation and say, hey, even as a counselor for all those years, I myself needed to go see someone and talk to someone. So I affirm over and over again to our congregation that, hey, it's okay. It's okay to go talk to somebody. It's not a taboo or anything like that. In fact, I recently did a conference on, I call this topic a silent pain. And it's helping the faith-based community understand the suffering that comes with trauma. And the person that you're sitting next to most likely could be someone that is suffering from that. And I let them know that, hey, a lot of times people will ostracize people when they have saying that they're having some issues around mental health. The young lady who spoke earlier, I thought it was great. And she talked about this one thing that I'm really seeing that a lot before, where if you have a physical health, people will jump to help, but with the mental health, it's almost like it's taboo. And so I look at, when I looked at and presented this, I looked at the whole piece of the man at the pool of Bethesda. You know, where the story takes place, where the sick man was around a colonnade of other people who had same infirmities or different ones, but at the end of the day, they all had some type of issue going on. And the problem is that some of the people are laying there, some of us, even as pastors, different parishioners, and we sit around and we don't want to talk about what's going on in our life. And it was at that time that this man sat there for 38 years until Jesus came and said, hey, do you want to get well? And the biggest thing is that we need to do the same thing and talk to people. Hey, do you want to get well? How can I help you? How can I walk with you? And we need to do those things because, believe it or not, it's people in your choir, people in your pulpit, people preaching to you every day, people who are doing a number of things that are suffering from this issue. And you know, the Vegas rule, what stays in the house, what happens in the house stays in the house. Well, here's the thing that I learned. A lot of the things that you're going through, it started in your house. And here's what I do know. You can't get well in places that you got sick. And so we have to get to a place where we understand that mental health is real and it's not going away just with prayer. It's not going to happen just like that. That's why God gives the body a variety of gifts. And we have to love people through things. And loving them through it is not just, you know, warm and fuzzy, but it's really sitting there walking with them, being committed. And so I asked the congregation, I have a young lady who's a member, and I met with a group of people and we talked about this whole idea of having a mental health ministry. And I call it SCARS, SCARS. And that stands for Seeking Change and Restoring Souls. And with that, the vision there is to help those who have been battling with open wounds from the trauma and hurt that they've experienced in their lives to heal and be restored in a safe place. That's what we want. We want that to happen. And how we do that? We don't have a lot of psychiatrists or therapists in the house, but what we do instead, I tell our pastors, unless you have the certification, what we're doing is we're coaching. That's the biggest thing. We're going to be coaching. And how we do that is through small groups. And so what they're doing now, the person I have over this ministry, what they're doing now is that they actually are meeting with people who would do the coaching, and they themselves are first going to go through a small group and really confiding in one another things that they're battling with. Because the problem is that we'll sit and listen to people all day, but we won't tell people when we're struggling with things. We won't want to be open. I told the congregation, in the full congregation, everybody, look, I was molested as a child by a first cousin. And it took me at 5 years old, and it took me 23 years to bring that out in the open. I suppressed it for all that time. And the problem is that what happens when we suppress things, when we get things down inside, we go around and we look wounded because we are wounded and we're not healing. And a lot of times hurt people. And so I found myself sharing with the congregation, if I'm going to be a leader in this, if I'm going to take the reins and say, hey, it's okay to get help, then I need to talk about what I went through. And from there, it just snowballed down. Other people started talking about it. And so this at this point, we have people discussing these small groups. And what they're doing is that we do a women's group. We're going to start forming a men's group. And for our teenagers, we have a pastor who is very gifted in SEL, and social emotional learning, and she's going to take them through that track as well. The goal is that this is be a continued thing that we'll do. And we'll do conferences, we'll do some workshops, whatever we need to do to help people understand that mental health is real, but it's something that God has given us the ability to address, through hands-on, through walking with people, through loving people and letting them know you're not by yourself. You are not by yourself. And so we talk about these things a lot in a lot of our small groups. We also, like I said, we're doing it with our teens that come to the church. And here's a big piece. We always go out into the community. We go out into the community, talking to other people, sharing with families, talking to them, find out what they need. We do a weekly food pantry. We do a monthly food distribution. We're out doing things in the community to talk to people about this thing, especially now that COVID has really jumped. We want to help people become free of things that's really tormenting them and bothering them. And if a person needs a one-to-one session with a psychiatrist, we will offer our resources that we know of people who do counseling. And they can get the professional counseling that they need. I'm just saying the biggest thing that makes this work, you guys, as a body of Christ, is that we have to be open and willing to wrap our arms around every man, every woman, every child that is suffering from some form of mental health, whether and also some form of physical health. We have to love people. And I love the fact, and I'll end it when I'll say this. I love the fact that the person that's a good Samaritan is a story we all are familiar with. I love the fact that this man, when he seen this person beaten, he had compassion, he felt it. And not only did he feel it, he did something about it. And what's interesting is that the people who walked by him were the people of the church. We had a priest and we had a Levite. The bottom line is that I don't want to be a spectator. And I tell the congregation, I don't want to be a spectator watching people suffer. I want to be able to participate in their healing. So thank you very much. We're continually developing this. And we're going to talk more about it. We're going to send more things out about it once we're fully up and running as we continue to do this. And it's not just our church, but we've actually connected with another church that's willing to help as well. So that's where we are. And thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to speak about that.
Thank you, Pastor Harold. That was awesome. So at this point, we're going to, we're a little ahead of schedule, which is great. So that can leave room for more questions if need be. We are asking that you put your questions in the chat. And if you want your question to go to someone and specifically or specific to a panelist that you heard this morning, you can put that in the chat as well. So the first question I want to, that we have here is going to be directed to Pastor Harold. And so Pastor Harold, yeah, you just spoke and we have a question for you already, right? Okay. So do you have any tips? Well, there are a couple. Hey, the first one is, how did you encourage your community to join and share in your program?
Like again, going back and becoming an open book, if you will, talking to people about what I've been through, and also sharing with them examples and inviting other men and other women, people who have been through some stuff, and they spoke about it. And at that point, we just offered it. We put it out there. People began to say, hey, I want to be involved in that. And I had one lady said, I want to run it. We have this one particular woman who runs this. Her name is Florence Roberson. And she does the program in Washtenaw County called Sure Moms.
Yes.
And it is phenomenal. And so she's doing that right in the community. She's doing that and she loves it. She loves it. And that's hard, but she loves it. And so that's a way to let people know that providing these programs, saying we're going to do this. We've taught our kids, our youth for a few years, because I've been a big fan of this, trying to help people as social emotional learning, as well as some CBT things, cognitive behavioral stuff. We've actually, in mindfulness, so we've actually did a number of things that would help people get prepared and understand this is what we do. We cannot leave that out. Jesus loves every single individual. We cannot sit here and cast people to the wayside.
Awesome. One more quick question for you, Pastor Harold. how do you have any tips on talking with Black men about getting help for their mental health?
Getting out there, being straight up with them,
Okay.
going out saying, hey, because I go out and talk to them all the time in the community and say, hey, if you needed something, what could we do to help provide that? And you know what? So many men, one of the biggest things that especially our Black men deal with, and men in general, is that we are afraid to show emotion. I was told as a young boy, men don't cry. That had to be the worst information and worst information I could ever receive, because I found out when that bottled up in you, you will begin the process of really hurting, and you'll start causing different types of illnesses on yourself. You'll have a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, you'll be angry, and you will not be as strong and as valuable to your family. You'll become more like someone that it's like the wife is raising another child. And so I tell them up front, hey, it's okay. It's okay to show emotion. It's okay to tell people I need help. Because, and again, we have to be the first example of that, and letting people and loving men through this. And so that's kind of where I just go out in the community and talk to guys, and we have them come up. Some of them come up and they're either high or they're drunk or something like that. And some people will say, we don't want to bother deal with that. Well, look, I figure like this. Do you think Jesus wants to help the person deal with their alcoholism or their addictions or stuff like that first? No, he wants to deal with their heart. Change the way they think, you change their lives, period.
That's awesome. Okay, folks, I'm not seeing not enough questions in the chat, so I'm sure there's more. So I'd like to get some more folks to get those questions out there. I think this question is something that Melissa spoke about, but we can ask again. So Melissa, this person is writing, they often have clients with only Medicaid coverage. How are mental health resources, therapy, and psychiatry made equally available to folks with no insurance, underinsured, or undocumented people?
So our CARES team provides mental health care specifically to those underinsured individuals, especially the undocumented individuals. CARES can provide services to them, Medicaid, non-Medicaid, private insurance. But the health plans also have coverage for, there's lots of entities in the community that take Medicaid HMO plans. But I also think it's interesting that oftentimes Medicaid, when you have Medicaid, you're actually more insured for mental health services than you are if you have private insurance. If you have private insurance, you're actually sometimes underinsured because unfortunately, community mental health provides case management, eyes on meds, residential care, and those services aren't really available to other agencies and other folks. So our CARES team provides coverage for everyone regardless of their funding source. So if you call our number, we will help get you linked to us or another provider with your insurance. We keep provider lists. We know all the mental health providers in our community and what insurance they take.
All right, sounds terrific. Thank you. I'm going to just ask a question to you, Andrea. I'm going to go back to you. How did you learn about peer-to-peer? I'm just curious. And what gave you because that's pretty brave, I think, to join in a group of individuals you don't know, join into a program that's, you don't know anybody and you're coming to be vulnerable. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I've heard about NAMI and peer-to-peer from someone who worked at CMH at Washtenaw County Community Mental Health Center. And they thought it would be a good fit for me to take the class and to maybe potentially, which I am taking steps now in leading a class. So they thought that would be a good fit for me. And it was hard going into it initially because in the peer-to-peer class, the educational program, we share a lot of personal information about ourselves. But I guess when it all came down to me, for me, it was, and which would, I notice with a lot of mental health programs, and I hear a lot of other people say, at some point it gets to where you really want to help yourself. And that's what it was for me. I knew that I needed more information about mental health, and I didn't know where to go to get it. I didn't know this presentation has been so enlightenful for me, because I did not know about all of these resources, and I didn't have the resources or know where to go. So I just wanted to learn more about mental health and about how to help myself. And that's why I initially signed up for peer-to-peer.
Awesome. Thank you. And we're glad to have you in this community. The next question is for Dr. Kershaw. Do you find yourself prescribing meds for depression, anxiety to your patients, since it's so difficult to see a psychiatrist initially? So are you seeing more patients with mild to moderate and you're prescribing meds for them?
Absolutely. Like I said, that's something that we are trained during our residency to be evaluating and starting treatment. You know, there's been a shortage of mental health providers forever. It's never been easy to get access. And so we are often the first line of, and for many people, that is, you know, we point them in the direction and encourage them to connect with some form of support, whether it's formal talk therapy or a pastor or a support group or something like that, where they can really start to talk about some of these issues, just like some of our other presenters. The therapy of sharing and talking is incredibly important, and having a pastor or a doctor or someone reaffirm that and say, no, really, this is important. And then absolutely getting people started on some of the medications, and the safer, newer medications. Well, they're not newer. I'm just old enough that they are newer. Anyway, they've been around for a long time, and they're, you know, they often address anxiety, depression. Now, where we do need help is, you know, as people are having those more urgent or severe symptoms. And those are the people that we really try to reach out, and having resources, having either being able to have the patient see the psychiatrist, or even being able to reach out and say, okay, I have this patient in this situation. You know, the more complex diagnoses, the people who aren't responding to first line medications and some talk therapy, who have more severe symptoms, who have more prolonged symptoms. Those are the people that we really need to be making referrals and trying to find resources for. And it is frustrating, and it's often, yeah. So that's at Hope Clinic. We've had Dr. Craig Washington, who's been our consultant. And he can't see everybody, but he's there for us. So when I have a patient that I'm like, okay, I think I need to add a mood stabilizer, can you, he can, right. He is often there to just be able to say, well, this, this would make the most sense. And, and just sort of give me that backup. So, but absolutely, primary care is essential for treatment, and for many people, sufficient.
Yeah. As a practicing physician, I'm sure your hands are so full, because just the way I understand mental illness, it's so complex and different. It shows up differently in different folks, and it's just a complex situation. So we appreciate
it. It is, but again, if you're treating the whole person, right? And if you get down to the bottom of it. Like, you know, you can treat the symptoms for years and never really where, and until you dig down and get into this, like, well, you know, anxiety, well, depression, you know, often if you really get in there and start addressing those core issues, the other things become much easier to manage, and people are able to take better care of themselves and take control of their other health issues. And, you know, so it's an investment that pays off. And I completely agree. You know, unfortunately, the way our medical system is set up right now, many physicians, many providers don't have that extra, what they perceive as extra time to invest. But it is, you ask the right questions, you dig, and a lot of times you get to that more core issue that allows you to then make progress with someone.
Wonderful. That's phenomenal. Someone also spoke about here in the chat, how do you help a family understand more about their loved one who may have a mental illness? And I can answer that a little bit.
I was going to say, NAMI.
Right, absolutely. It's difficult to, I know for me, I needed that information, didn't have it, didn't know where to get it. And I had a friend, a colleague that worked at community mental health at the time and said to me, look up NAMI. And that was the best thing that could have ever happened, because I learned back then, the family to family, which we have now, it's 8 weeks now, but when I was going, I believe it was 10 to 12 weeks. And it was the best 10 to 12 weeks that I could have spent learning all about symptoms and what to look for and medications and and just basics about how the brain works, and really going through a gamut of understanding my own emotions, you know, the anger that you have and the guilt that you have when you're living in support of a loved one, or maybe in a child who, you know, their life may be different just because they have a chronic illness that they have to manage. So that is getting someone to one of our education programs that is living in support of a loved one with a mental illness is just completely invaluable. Of course, working with the team, physicians, community mental health, but the education piece is really high. And actually, I also want to say, because it's a place where everyone's dealing with the same issue, right? So our family to family education are for folks that are living in support. So you have people sitting next to you that are going through what you're going through, and you have that exchange. And I believe it's the pastor mentioned it, and also you, Dr. Kershaw, the importance of just having that community and discussing these things and being open about what your feelings are and what's happening, you know, getting to the core of what is going on. So I just wanted to add that little bit there myself. Someone is asking, can we explain what SEL is, social emotional learning? Who can speak to that? Is that Pastor Harold? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, you know, just something briefly. One of the things is helping people, especially young people and even older people, about changing the thinking. And so here's the thing. So I don't know if you guys ever heard of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Typically, a lot of kids, when people are dealing with a fixed mindset, they're at a place like, I can't achieve anything greater than this. This is where I am. This is how it's going to be. Or the F or the E I got, or on a report, or a bad review on a job. I'm never going to get past this. And so with a growth mindset, it says that, yes, I may have messed up here, but it's just another opportunity for me to get better later. You know, the other piece is helping people, young people and other people need to show empathy for other people, how to be caring, how to be having these conversations. And it's a lot of stuff on the website about about social emotional learning and cognitive behavioral, CBT, and mindfulness. I think that is a great piece. Some parts of mindfulness you may not agree with, but it's a lot of parts of it that, like, something is simple. I'll give you an example. This is something we can all use. If a person come to you and they're having a lot of anxiety, a lot of issues, take a piece of ice. I've taken a piece of ice, have them open their hands, put a piece of ice in their hands and clench it, and let's just keep having the conversation. What you'll notice is that their level of anxiety will start to shrink down, and they will focus more on that ice in their hand, and then that allows you to have some conversation and then work in some ways in which some breathing techniques, some things that we can show them how to kind of relax. And something as simple as an ice cube don't cost you anything, you know. And other aspects, you know, it's just different types of learning. I would have to, I'm gonna sit here and try to find something I can put in the chat, and you guys can go on there and kind of look at that. But social emotional learning is huge, not just for children, but it's huge for adults too.
That's awesome. And we have another question for you, Pastor Harold, kind of piggybacking that. The question is, I really liked this person. They really liked what you said in the chat room about physical distancing rather than social distancing. Yeah. Could you say more about that?
So you remember when they came out with this whole notion of being socially distant, I think people felt like, not only do I have to be away from you, I can't talk to you. I can't mingle with you in any way. And so I said, you know what? Let's stop saying social distancing, because I'd rather be physical. So in our sanctuary, we got probably like 997 seats, right? And so what we do then is that I can spread out and we can still connect. We can stay at a distance a little bit, still have conversation. I used to sit in the back of the church at the end of service and shake people's hands, give people hugs. Now I can't do that, but guess what I do now? We fist bumping, you know, elbow bumping. And occasionally some people with masks on say, look, I know it's COVID. You got a mask, I got a mask. Can we side hug? You know, it's ways that we still got to connect. As human beings, we are people who are relational. And so telling me not to be socially distant from you is telling me not to get into this relationship with you. It's impossible. It's just like when people say people at risk. That's the worst statement in the world, because all of us are at risk of something, right? How about we say this? People at promise. And that way it just gives us some hope. You know, so those kind of words, our words have so much power. Jesus was so correct. We got to watch what we say. Life and death flows from the tongue.
Awesome. That's really cool. Another question that just came up is, how is NAMI working with law enforcement to safely assist during mental health crisis? Concerns of threats by calling police for help in BIPOC communities are real. And I would agree with that statement as far as some of the challenges that we're having in BIPOC communities. One of the things that I would say, well, NAMI is not directly related to any training, but we are partnering with the Office of the Sheriff. We recently just did a behavioral health training with the Office of the Sheriff, where several of our volunteers, and I believe Andrea May, who's on this call, has also participated in sharing her story, so we can train officers on real life information, real life situations for people with lived experience. Andrea, do you want to say anything about your experience with that training for the crisis training?
Sure, yes. It was a very enlightening experience. I honestly, being a woman of color, was a little bit nervous. But when I tell you that they were all there to learn, they wanted to know more information about mental health. That was so mind-blowing, and it was so amazing. So they listened to our stories, they listened to the presentation, they interacted with us. It was a very productive and it was a great presentation that we did.
Wonderful. And so I remember when Sheriff Clayton had reached out to us, he was asking for role players, and I was a little cautious about that, but it seemed like it worked out because you were actually able to share stories. Also on behind the scenes, who were one of our technical people, John Cloud, was also, I believe that he participated in that crisis training as well. So we had quite a few folks from NAMI participating and help educating our community on this. But I want to go to Melissa really quick to talk a little bit about the crisis team, because I don't want to get that confused with what NAMI did for the behavioral training as far as helping folks understand those behaviors and with the lived experience. So Melissa, can you say a little bit about the crisis? So I want to separate that.
Sure. So our crisis team often goes out with law enforcement, and we do have a really good relationship with them. We've, trained most law enforcement entities in Washtenaw County. So the whole sheriff's office, Ann Arbor, Chelsea, Ypsilanti have all been through a bit like a managing mental health training and know our number. One thing we are working on though is because, you know, a lot of people don't know that our crisis team responds to most crises without law enforcement. The majority of the crisis calls we go out do not include them. You know, some situations where we would call is if we know that, you know, maybe the person we're going to see has a history of, you know, violence. Maybe we know they have weapons. We always bring them if we're going in the middle of the night, just to keep us safe. And we normally have a process in place where we're talking together to see like who's supposed to be doing what. But one thing we are working on as a community is really trying to come up with a more equitable crisis response that includes our crisis team being responded, being sent out and dispatched if you call 911. Because right now that's not something that we have. If you call 911, law enforcement is going to come to you. And right now, we don't have the resources on our team to be dispatched by a dispatch, but we are looking at partnering with all of our law enforcement entities so that we can be included in that first responder continuum, so that if you do call 911 and it is a mental health emergency, you can get a mental health professional that can be dispatched to you instead of a law enforcement officer. But sometimes you'll need both. You know, we work really well with them. I will say that we need law enforcement to help because they are an entity that can oftentimes keep people safe, keep us safe. So it's definitely a good partnership. There's room for both of us at the table, and it's really important that we're working together. But the majority of people who need mental health care and need mental health response don't need you know, help from law enforcement. So we are there. So if you call our number, we will respond, just us. Unless we really feel like there's a, you know, something that we need to keep everyone safe, and then we'll call them. But
awesome. It's really nice that things are just, you know, things are still broken and not perfect, but I can just see there's a light at the end of the tunnel with all these folks that are the work you do, Melissa, at Community Mental Health, and even with NAMI and all of us here, a part of helping each other and moving forward and just a better outcomes, promoting better outcomes for folks who live with mental illness. So I have a question. I'm looking to Dr. Kershaw. Someone asked, what about the online counseling services like BetterHealth? I have heard that these organizations don't have ethical practices. I'm not sure how you want to respond to that. That's a sticky one, but I'm just reading it from the chat.
And I don't feel like I can speak to that.
That's fair.
Yeah, that would be more for one of the licensed clinical social workers, or I think my, at Hope, that's who I would go to, is I would go to Julie and say, hey, do you know anything about this? And I know she often, she has specific of those that she refers to in addition to NAMI, and you know, she sort of has a resource list, and I'm sure that you teams can speak to it more than me.
Okay, that's fair. Melissa?
I just want to say, you know, as far as the organization goes, if you're providing mental health treatment, you're required to have a license to practice. And if you have a license, you're held to those ethical standards. So each individual clinician is held to, you know, to perform ethical practices based on the requirements of their license. So that's what I can say about that.
That was very helpful. Thank you. And I'm sure the person that put that question in is grateful too. So thank you to both of you. Well, we've got a couple more minutes. I don't see anything else. Let's see, one second. I think someone's wanting to share something, but I'm not finding it. So I'm going to ask Maria to put that in the chat for me. Oh, Marita on the call. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Marita, you want to share something?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
So after I heard Pastor Harold a few months ago speaking about mental health, so I work with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. So I put in our program the last half hour of every meeting, we go over to church for a half hour of silent meditation guided meditation. Whatever, I forget exactly what Pastor Harold said, but just like, we just need to get these kids off their phone, off media, get them quiet, give them time to think, get them time to know who they are. So thank you, Pastor Harold, for that.
Thank you for sharing that, Marita. So does anyone have any 1 minute last things that they want to share before we go on to the next part? Anyone from our panel here? Nothing? All right. Well, I want to thank you, and I really appreciate it. We all appreciate your input. And now we're going to go to the benediction and blessing from Reverend Charade Clark. So Reverend Clark, you are up. You're muted, Reverend Clark.
Sorry. All right. Will you pray with me now? God, we've gathered together today, your people, to renew and to refresh. God, keep us ever mindful and grateful in the ministries you call us to. Keep us mindful and grateful for our own bodies and for our own selves and our own self-care. We pray this earnestly and most reverently to you. Amen. And now, with eyes wide open, go from this place to reap the harvest of God's love. Go from this place to continue to sow seeds of justice and peace and love. Go from this place to nourish and to be nourished, knowing that love is ever a part of our lives. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? Now go in peace and always remember to be kind.
Thank you very much. That was beautiful. So we are ahead, really.
Amen.
Yes, amen. Totally ahead of our schedule today. But this was beautiful. I want to give a special thanks to all of our panelists and our speakers today. Without this has been months of organizing and working and getting together for meetings so we can have this second annual program. I'm hoping that that we will be able to do this again next year and even have a much larger audience. I also want to thank the communications team that does the work behind the scenes. It looks easy, but it is not. I want to thank that's Maria Alfonso, Ashley Wu, John Clow, and Lisa DeRamos. They are awesome folks here from NAMI, staff and volunteers, and we certainly appreciate you. I want everyone to know that, in conclusion, these materials will be sent out by email for everyone who registered for this program today, and follow-up questions can be sent to, if there's something you think about after we have logged off today and you want to get that question answered, please send your email to communications@namiwc.org. And I'd like to invite everyone to reach out to have a NAMI program in their community. I often, well, not often, but several years ago, I had, we would like to do this more often, but I myself was going to a couple of churches when they would have something, or of course, me representing NAMI, attending church health fairs and having a table with NAMI resources and resources from the community as well. So if your congregation would like that, please get in touch with us so we can set something up and come out to do that. I hope that everyone has been blessed today in some way and is taking something back to your congregations, just learning a little more about mental health. And we thank you. We thank you for your time this morning. So I think we're gonna let you out a little early, and unless someone tells me that I should be doing something different, I think I want you all to have a wonderful day and be in touch. Thank you.